Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick, and this is MSFS Flight Plans, your ultimate destination for cool things to do, cool things to see, and all kinds of amazing places in the world to learn about, all right here in Microsoft Flight Simulator. My goal, of course, is to make sure that no member of our channel or anyone who ever stumbles across these videos ever utters those dreadful words, "I've run out of things to do in the sim." What an awful feeling that is. So every now and then, living down here in balmy Jacksonville, Florida, I occasionally get a little nostalgic for my former residences up in the parts of the country that have the seasonal luxury of enjoying the autumn months. And now that my Rex Acu season is working again, I figured I would at least vicariously enjoy the cool air and changing leaves as we explore a tiny little slice of the Great Lakes that not only is cool, but is going to look very cool too. We're up by Sandusky, Ohio, right on the southwestern tip of Lake Erie, and any of you that have been up here can probably guess exactly why I chose this location. That's right, Cedar Point, one of the best amusement parks in the US, if not the world, and I have a freeware add-on for it that is going to make it look even more awesome as we cruise by. But there are a few things to see while we're in the area, so let's not delay. As you can see, our ride today is the RANS S6-S, a beautiful looking plane and a lot of fun to fly. Very, very well looking on the inside. You can see the modeling in here is just fantastic. And if you load up this flight plan, which of course I will have in the video description if you want to take it just as we are, it's going to start you at the other end of the runway. So I don't know why I've got it programmed to start at this side, but it starts you down there. So unless you want to circle around when you get in the air, you'll have to cruise down to this end of it before you get going. And a good cruising altitude for this flight is 2,000 to 2,500, probably be the best, I think, for seeing everything. We're not going to have any mountains to worry about, and we're going to land out on a little island in Lake Erie. So all of it is just going to be really cool. All right, let's just check and see what we got going here. Landing lights on, one notch of flaps. Everything else looks pretty good. Our transponder's on. Oh, they even gave us a transponder code. That's cool. All right, I think we're good. Parking brake off. And this plane, it was creaky and noisy and everything you want in a plane like this. Rickety. Just right. And I'm guessing this thing here is the end of the runway, but I guess we can start wherever we want, so let's just start right here. Let's get going. Look at these trees. Amazing. You can almost smell the crisp leaves on the ground. The live weather was very dark and cloudy and rainy and blustery. There was like a 25-knot wind, so I had to turn that off. But this looks just how I want it to look anyway, so that's perfectly fine. This plane's really light, so heavy winds would be a problem. And once we get up to a reasonable altitude, we will turn the autopilot on. And I don't see an autopilot box in here, but when I use my external hardware, it works. So we're going to fly with it so I can pay attention to what's going on outside the plane. I like to do that as often as I can. All right, go ahead and kick it on. Nav, vertical speed, we'll go up at 500 feet a minute. And I'm going to start at 2,000. I think that'll be all right for us. But this area is really nice. Never been through here in real life. I know a lot of people from this area, and some people that have even been out to the islands that we're going to land on. Used to come up here to vacation, so maybe you'll recognize some of them once we get out there as well. Be mindful of a couple of big masts they have sticking out over here, and some power lines, so you want to make sure you gain some air pretty quick when you're taking off if you're following this route. And you see they got a couple big windmills out here. A couple things to be mindful of. But the fields look great. The ground buildings look great. Everything looks really nice out here. And if you're wondering about the Norway flight, which I have mentioned on the tail end of our past couple videos, it is in the hopper. And you know, they just did that whole area up there in the sim for the last world update. But it is an absolute beast on performance drag. It's really, really bad. And so I'm trying to find a plane that allow me to at least get up in the mid-30s on our frame rates. But so far, I'm really struggling with it. And one of our members is from the area, too. He gave me a great flight plan, some points of interest, a lot of details about him. So it's going to be good. I just need to find a plane that we can do it in. So I'm working through that right now, but it is in the hopper still. All right, we're going to take a couple lefts here, and then we'll see our first point of interest, which is going to be a series of them. Let's just take in the scenery, though. Look at that. Amazing. Looks so good. So Lake Erie is back behind us now. And of course, we'll circle around and hit that because Cedar Point is right on Lake Erie. All right, so this first spot that we're going to see, I'll put in the category of being way too awesome for me to not know about it, which I did not prior to this flight. I hate to admit that, but it's true. And you can take this plane almost up to full throttle and not have any issues there, so I'm going to kind of juice it a little bit. And then I don't think it'll overspeed either. I might have to watch that just a bit. We're almost at 2,000. So this huge wooded area here is called NASA's Neil Armstrong Test Facility, which is billed as the only place in the world where upper stage propulsion systems can be tested in conditions that simulate high-altitude operation. And they started using this place in 1968 to test Centaur rockets, which were, and apparently still are, used in upper stages of virtually every large rocket variant we've ever sent into space. All the Atlases, the Saturns, all of them used them. And I tried to figure out exactly how they go about simulating the conditions of space, and it sounds like they seal the rockets in a huge chamber and then depressurize it to try to represent the lower atmospheric pressure of up to 100 miles in space. And then they turn on a bunch of infrared lamps to simulate solar radiation and finally cool the crap out of it with liquid nitrogen that they said can bring it all the way down to negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think this is the building here where they do that. Those did not model exactly right. This one up here did because it's an add-on, which will be included in the video description, and it's free. And it looks like they've even got some exhaust repressurization systems going on the outside of it, which makes sense because they probably have to simulate every aspect of that burn. And this thing right down here is called the Electric Aircraft Test Bed. And this is where they're testing electric hybrid engines for commercial aviation. And I couldn't figure out exactly where it is out here on the property, but they also have what they call a hypersonic tunnel facility where they test air-breathing jets in conditions that can go all the way up to Mach 7 wind speeds. And since there's no fan that can generate that kind of airflow, they do it by spraying liquid nitrogen across a 3 megawatt graphite heater, which converts to a gas and expands, which is then mixed with ambient temperature and oxygen to simulate the Earth's atmosphere. And they run the whole mixture through a series of sequentially smaller exhaust tubes until it arrives at whatever wind speed they're looking for. I thought that was just absolutely brilliant. Alright, this big dome thing right here is really cool. It's called the Space Environments Complex, and it is the biggest and baddest in pretty much every category. It has the world's largest space simulation vacuum, which is that big dome there at 100 feet wide by 122 feet high. The world's most powerful reverberant acoustic test facility, which can crank out up to 163 decibels. And just to give you an idea of how loud that is, 130 decibels is considered the threshold of pain, and 150 would be like standing next to a fighter jet with the afterburners on. So that's loud. And I found a really cool video of a guy playing a Pink Floyd riff inside that thing, so I'll link that down in the description too if you want to check it out. And believe me, you should. As if all that was not awesome enough, they've also got the world's highest capacity and most powerful spacecraft shaker system down there. And to keep the whole thing from shaking itself to pieces, they mount it on a 4.6 million pound base and then drill that thing down into the bedrock. And when it's doing its thing, it can shake the blazes out of an object up to 75,000 pounds at oscillations ranging from 5 to 150 hertz. So I'm guessing if I had to select my own execution method, and my options were getting my flesh ripped off by Mach 7 winds, having my brain fried by 163 decibels, or getting vibrated to pieces. That's actually pretty tough to call. Man, I wish Chet was here. I'd like to see what he'd say. I guess probably the vibrator, because that would do it the quickest, I would think. Chet would definitely pick the vibrator. Alright, this thing up here really caught my eye, and I didn't even notice it on the Google map until I flew over it, and it looks like an amusement park, but it's not. It's called the Kalahari Resort and Convention Center. It's going to be right down here, and you're going to see a whole bunch of what look like roller coasters, but they're slides. It's the Midwest's largest indoor water park, with a distinctly African theme, as the name implies. I think they're building this part out right now, and it may be covered now, but you can see some of the slides coming out here, and these are all covered. Like, they come out the sides and then go back in here. But it looks like they're still building this on the satellite maps, and you can see it's flat, but you can tell there's slides there. And I think this is the convention center, and in real life this has a flat roof, but the rest of that looks pretty accurate. This is, in fact, outdoors, but all the rest of that is inside. And I checked out some pictures of that online, and it looked pretty cool. And then right up here, they've also got this building right here is one of those Great Wolf Lodge water parks, which is much older than the other place, and I bet they were just thrilled to hear about the Kalahari going up right down the road. So they've got two of them here. This is really a destination for amusement. All these parks everywhere. And then they got another water park up here called Cedar Point Shore. So that's where Cedar Point is up there. We'll get a good look at that in just a minute. Of course. Look at those trees down there. Beautiful. So this is Sandusky Bay out here. Here's Lake Erie. And then here's the island that we're going to land on. So this is going to be a very, very short flight. Probably 20 minutes in the air in total. Nice looking golf course down there. All right, right up here in this area, there's a whole bunch of athletic fields that we're going to see right down there along the shoreline. And today that place is called Sports Force Parks. And they built it on the site of what used to be Griffin Sandusky Airport, and they closed the runways for that place in 2013. But you can still select it in little NavMap in the sim, so I think this was part of the add-on for this. So I think normally without that add-on, which you'll definitely want to have, which is free and will be linked in the video, they make this the sports park. So one of the runways went down here like this, and then the other one, this was the end of the other one, it came through here like this. But now it's all athletic fields. And it looks good. Alright, this little string of houses right here runs along a place called Cedar Point Road, and I'm guessing this is probably the main way for the tourists to get out here, because I bet these people do a lot of griping and complaining about traffic going to the park down this road, but this big bridge here I think is probably the main flow to get to Cedar Point. And I have to imagine the houses down here are not cheap when I was looking around on the satellite map. It's kind of funny because these down here, most of them are quite a bit smaller. You can see the footprints are about the right size, but when you get down a little closer to the park, some of them get pretty big. And they obviously don't get any hurricanes out here, but I wonder if they ever have any issues with the lake storms in these parts. They probably don't have too many 100-mile-per-hour plus winds, but I don't know. And this is a little wildlife preserve out here, and it looks a lot more swampy in real life. They gave it some grass here in the sim. Alright, as we come up on Cedar Point, I'll tell you a little bit about it. And as you're about to hear, this place is iconic in every sense of the word. It was first opened in 1870, making it the second oldest in the U.S. after Lake Compounce in Connecticut, which I've never heard of. And I lived in Connecticut for 8 years, so it must not be all that special other than being old. And this place is known as America's roller coaster. Boasting this place up here is, not Compounce. But they've got 16 of them, roller coasters, putting them in third place for North America after a Six Flags in California and a place in Canada called Wonderland, which I'm going to have to check that out too, because that one holds a lot of titles as well. And Cedar Point has received numerous awards over the years, including being the only place in the world to have 5 coasters exceeding 200 feet in height. And they have one down there called the Millennium Force, which tops out at over 300 feet, and we'll be able to spot that one. And it's also won the coveted Golden Ticket Award for 16 straight years, spanning 1997 to 2013. And you guys know, if you've seen some of our other flights, I'm always going on about how bad the amusement parks look, but look at the detailing on this thing. Parking lot isn't great, but who cares about that? All the rest of this is amazing. And if you turn the lights down, turn the sun down, it's all lit up and stuff, looks really cool. So I think this is the Millennium Force here. And that one looks even taller than that, actually. It looks like it runs up the side there. With nearly 3.5 million visitors a year, it's second only to Wonderland, again up in Canada, for all of North America as far as passer-throughs. And for once, China did not win the title of the largest amusement park in the world. That goes to Walt Disney World down in Orlando, at roughly 25,000 acres. Look, they got a big resort down here too. Look at that place. And here's the water park, this little section over here. That's Cedar Point Shores. And Wikipedia had a little chart that described and ranked all the coasters here. Well, they put each of them into one of 5 categories, an escalating thrill level ranging from low to aggressive. And if we leave out the one kiddie ride they have, 10 of the 16 coasters they have there were rated as aggressive, with the other 6 in the second highest category. So that place is not for the faint of heart. And every one of those in the aggressive category broke some kind of world record for coasters when it was opened. I don't know if any of them are still holding either fastest, tallest, longest. This island right here is called Johnson's Island, and I only found that because I was looking for forts, and they mentioned something about a Confederate cemetery down there. And it was used during the Civil War as the only site the Union used for POWs from the South, where they were holding just officers initially, and then they eventually held some other folks there as well. But they held a total of 15,000 people during the course of the war. And the only thing that's left, unfortunately, it's all residential stuff now, but there's that little Confederate cemetery down there where 206 of the prisoners died, not from mistreatment, but just bad weather. So a little bit about the town of Sandusky, back behind us now, which was doing just fine until that whole ordeal at Penn State. It got its start as a major frontier trading post in the 18th century with all kinds of forts popping up around the water. And I don't have to tell you how heartbroken I am that none of them are still around today. But after the War of 1812, the area grew into a hotspot of transportation, with its huge Sandusky Bay being a great portage destination for the ships traveling along the Erie. And it had a good bit of industry in its own right, including wine production, lumber processing, and limestone mining, which is not what this is here. This whole area is called Marblehead, and I don't know if they were originally mining out marble here, otherwise I don't know why they call it that, but now they just use it for concrete aggregate, so they're just grinding stuff up and selling it to concrete companies. But when we come over this little town here, it just looks so nice. They got some little baseball fields and stuff down there. Just wonderful. But Sandusky was also a major stop along the Underground Railroad, as fleeing slaves would hop from there over to Canada. They'd cross right over Lake Erie, and that was the last stop before making it to Canada. And even got a cameo in Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. So there's that. But as far as mines go, that looks pretty good. Texturing looks good. The only other thing I'd ask for are some trucks. Well, they do have some trucks down there. Look at that. Look at this town up here. Can you imagine how great their little Main Street celebrations are around Thanksgiving and Christmas? Must just be wonderful. And because I have my new add-on pack, all of those docks are not sunk into the water, which is fantastic. Looks like they have a boat of some kind that's a little flat down there, but other than that, beautiful. Everything is wonderful. And now we're getting ready to set up for our approach into Kelleys Island, which is one of the many islands out here. And each of these has their own freeware airport available, all of which I will link in the video description if you want to check them out. And when we get to the end of the flight, we'll look at a little nav map and I'll kind of show you what else is out here. And though the permanent population of all the islands is under 1,000 most of the year, each are popular destinations for tourists during the winter months. And I read they're particularly popular for people who like to fish. In fact, there's one little island out here that just has the only landmark on it was something they just called the Fisherman's Cabin. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get down to 1,500 feet just to get ready for that. And back before the tourists took over, these islands were also very popular amongst the local Native American tribes, who use the chain as a crossing point to get across Lake Erie over to what is now known as Canada. And Kelleys Island, which is the one that we're coming into, was also heavily utilized during the War of 1812, along with some of these others. First by the British, who called it Sandusky Island, and then the Americans, who called it Island Number 6, and then Cunningham Island. And it got its current name in 1840 when brothers Datus and Irid Kelly, which is just great first names for someone in the 1800s, bought it just to make some money off of it. They put a big limestone mine, which we're going to fly right over, and they were also pulling lumber out of there, but it looks like most of the trees have grown back. And jumping back to the Native Americans for just a minute, there's a big flat rock, which is somewhere right around here. It's called Inscription Rock. And that thing is covered with petroglyphs from the 1600s that scholars think were used to communicate hunting conditions and migration plans to anybody that was coming through after them. And if you look at some pictures online, they're mostly weathered away now, but they still have some where you can see the images on there, which is pretty cool. But unfortunately for those guys, they got wiped out by the Iroquois around 1665, as the Iroquois went on a campaign to slaughter everyone who wasn't on board with them controlling the local fur trade. And unfortunately for the Iroquois, the European Americans weren't too keen on the idea of them controlling the fur trade either. So one of these islands out here is called Put In Bay, and that may be it right there. And I had heard that name so many times growing up because one of my friends used to come up here all the time during the summer. And they got a pretty big strip out at this one. The one we're coming into is pretty small, and all of the others are even smaller than this one, but that one is about 2,300 feet, I think. So if you need something a little bit bigger, most of them are paved. There's one that's dirt, and I think another one that's grass. But you should, if you're flying something like this, be able to get down okay. And we're not going to really... There's a strip right there. You can really... It's kind of tough to see it. And then here's this big old limestone quarry. which is obviously now filled in with water. Alright, once we get straightened out, I'll start slowing down, coming down, and we'll get our flaps out, and we'll be done with it. But how great did that park look? Just amazing. And one thing I forgot to point out, because we were kind of zipping by it fast, but that Space Environments Complex, the thing with the big dome on it, all around it are a bunch of bunkers, like you might have seen up in Richmond by the Naval Ordnance Facility. I mean, lots of them, like dozens of them. And I can't really figure out why they would have those out there, because if they're using liquid propellants for all their tests, I don't know what they would need to put in there that might be explosive, because none of the second stage rockets ever had solid fuel. So maybe they were using it for something else back in the day, but if they were, I couldn't figure out what it was. Boy, that support's kind of in our way, isn't it? That's alright, we'll figure it out. Alright, give it one notch of flaps. And they say the stall speed on this thing, at least the VREF speed, is around 45, but I found that was a little bit slow. So I'm going to come in around 50 to 60. This is just gorgeous out here. Yeah, but I think if you leave the live weather on most times of the year out here on the lake, it's going to be a pretty brisk wind. Alright, one more notch of flaps. Heck, let's go for Brook. I'm going all the way with the flaps. And these weren't complete overhauls, the freewares for these airports, but they just cleaned them up a little bit. Got the runway markings correct and all that. Maybe fix the lights up a little bit. Boy, just a dead wind now, isn't it? Oh, look at these little houses out here. That's great. I got a little spot right at the end of the runway. I'm going to pull right up to somebody's patio. Alright, flaps up. And I forgot to turn my landing lights back on. I never turned them off. Alright, we were fine. Okay. Where's my little spot? It's right over here on the right. Listen to this thing creaking. That fiberglass just groaning. Yeah, we got a little driveway for us and everything. I don't know what they fish for out here. I've never been fishing on the Great Lakes, so I don't know. But apparently it's a big fishing spot. Alright, parking brake on. Turn her off. And we'll go ahead and open the door. Alright, here comes a little NavMap. Okay, so here's where we took off from, our little farm airport here. And this whole complex here, sorry, that groaning is me taking my feet off the brakes, is that Neil Armstrong test facility. Look how big this is. And here's where all of those bunkers are. Look at them all. Although they look to be probably not used for quite a while, so they must have been storing ordnance for something out here, but it's not like there's a huge naval base or anything out here. If you know what that's for, let me know. And as we came around here, here's a couple of different spots that I've got. This is where they do the second stage engine tests, and they put them in this great big building here, seal it all up, drop the pressure, I'm guessing. And I think these are what they must be using to repressurize the exhaust as it's coming out. Because you can see they've got some expansion tanks on there, or maybe compression tanks. But that's that. And then here's the electric aircraft test bed. And this might be where they are doing the hypersonic test as well. Because this looks kind of like the thing that I saw, only pictures from the inside of where they're generating those wind speeds. They have this big thing that kind of tightens down like that to get the wind speeds up a little bit higher. And they have a little exhaust thing coming out over here. So that might be where they're doing that, because I don't see another spot that looks big enough for them to be doing that. But they said apparently it's very dangerous to run the test. So I think once they get it all set up, they come out here. I don't know why it's so dangerous, but they come out here to actually administer them once they get it all set up and going. And then here's the Space Environments Complex with their huge dome. Not sure where the shaker or the acoustic room is, but be sure to check out that link I put of that guy playing the guitar in that room. It's pretty cool. And then here's the Kalahari Water Park. And you can see there, they're still building this part here. And I'm going to bet that they probably wound up putting a roof on that. But I don't know, because then they'd block off all these things here. So I'm not sure. But all this stuff here is indoors. And they got like a lazy river and everything there. I mean, it's huge. And this, of course, is the outdoor part here. And then I think this is where the convention center is. And there's some slide segments that are waiting to be built. And then right up the road is the Great Wolf. We didn't get a good look at that, but that's what it looks like. And they got a couple little slides running outside there, but that place isn't nearly as big as the other place. Man, those guys must have been so pissed when they opened the other one down the road. So here's the airport there. And you can see that in little NavMap, you can park down there and land and take off, but they do also have the athletic fields built in. So I wonder what that looks like in the sim if we didn't have that add-on, because they must have runways running through there. All right, here's Cedar Point Road with all the houses. And look how small most of these are. I bet most of them are probably much older houses. And when you get a little bit closer, you can see that one's pretty big. That one's huge. So as you get closer to the park, a lot of them seem to get a lot bigger. And here's that wildlife area. And look how swampy that looks here. It was really, really green in the sim. And then here's the city of Sandusky. And then here's the park, which I think looked a lot better in the sim, as a matter of fact. Of course, we're looking right down on the top of everything. And then here's where the water park is out here. And they close this place during the winter months. I think up through maybe Halloween. They open it on the weekends. But during the winter months, it's completely shut down. 16 roller coasters in there. All of them incredible, apparently. Yeah, this thing completely outside the water park. That would be chilly during the winter months. And I bet this was taken during the winter months because their wave pool's empty. And it looks awfully gray and brown down there. Here's Johnson's Island, and the little Confederate Cemetery Memorial is right in this vicinity right here, but you can see they've built the whole rest of this thing up with houses. Too much money to be made to leave any kind of memorials down there. And then here's Marblehead and that huge mine, the aggregate mine. I don't see any trucks driving around down there anyway. Kind of big structure there. It looked like we may have even been able to see a little bit of that. But look at this neighborhood. Beautiful. I would love to just travel through there around Thanksgiving. Be great. Okay, so here's Kelleys Island. And then right down here, they've actually got a little like roof over the thing where the stone is, the inscription stone. And it was right along the water line. And it may be even too small to see it from here. I can't recall exactly where that was, but it's somewhere right in this area down here. And so if you want to take off or land at some of the other places, it's a nice little flight if you want to do it. Here's Put In Bay, and you can see they got a pretty big, that's almost 3,000 feet, that runway, so that's a pretty good size. And the rest of these islands are a lot less inhabited. This one called Rattlesnake Island, that's pretty cool. Just got some grass runways, they're pretty small. Both of them are less than 1,500 feet. And then they got this place out here, which is Middle Bass Island, and then North Bass. And I think the dividing line between the U.S. and Canada may cut through one of these. I think this top island might be on the Canadian side, or maybe it cuts through here. And my first takeoff point was actually from up here on Pelee Island, but it just took too long and there wasn't much to see to come on down there. And this is where that little fishing shack is. Look at this place. Not landing a plane out there, but they got a little structure on there. And here's how close we are to Canada. So there it is right there. All those Native Americans just do a little hop, skip, and jump right over there, and then they're there. That's it, guys. Short hop flight, awesome destination, cool thing to learn about, and we accidentally found the Neil Armstrong Space Complex, so that's really cool. The amusement park looked amazing. The scenery was beautiful for this time of year. All in all, great little short hop flight. Can't wait to see you guys again in the skies. Later.